All right. Well, thank you all. Great to meet you. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about food, which I think is a different sort of topic that you're used to hearing about, especially on a biotech medical kind of night. But you'll find out why in a minute. 26% of all emissions in the world come from our food system. And so, how are we going to solve this problem? There's three options right now. First of all, we can all stop eating meat, not just meat, coffee, and chocolate. Unfortunately, ladies, I'm sorry, those are also really bad for the environment. We can have flavored or fake meat. Again, you can sometimes get cocoa that's not really cocoa, and these plant-based alternatives. Or some of you might have heard about cultivated, which is real meat, but it's grown in a lab. So disrupting the cow, if you will. And this is an option that is available also for, again, cocoa, coffee, honey, anything that can be grown traditionally. There is scientific evidence and people working on it today that can actually grow it in the lab at much lower carbon emissions than cows or some of those plants. So what do all of these three things have in common? Unfortunately, it's this. No one wants to do them. No one wants to eat them. Cultivated gets the closest, but it's still not quite there. If you've ever tasted anything that was made in a lab, which is very unlikely because it's not out in market yet. It's still in the scientific stage. But you've probably all eaten Impossible Burger, I imagine. And maybe even some of you have started to try and cut out some meat from your diet, which is really, really hard for all of us. There was a study that showed that only half of people who tried some of those alternative proteins for the first time were willing to try them again. And why? Because they didn't like the taste. Most of us look for the right taste over any other benefit of food. So why is this a problem? It's because we're using additive flavoring. We're adding flavors to these plants and to the meats that come out of a bioreactor. And so this adds extra ingredients on the label. It's quite costly. And the biggest problem is it actually doesn't work. It doesn't get us the taste that we want. So my name, as introduced, is Claire Purcell. I've spent my career in venture studios, primarily with Boston Consulting Group, and then with New Lab, which is a hardware co-working studio in New York, in Brooklyn. That's where I met my co-founder, Dr. Vanessa Small, who has spent her life, her career, developing unique novel enzymes for biotechnology companies, such as those that you can see on the screen. We've combined together to solve the flavor problem of sustainable foods. And the way that we're doing this is what we call cellular flavoring. But to explain cellular flavoring, I'm going to have to talk about something that we all know and love and could probably use a glass of right now, considering I think I'm the last pitch of the evening: wine. Those of you who are wine aficionados will know that the taste of wine actually comes from the region in which it was grown. It's called the terroir. Its climate, the soil, the surrounding plants, all of these things contribute to the flavor of the grapes that become the wine. The same is actually true of meat and, in fact, all foods. Whatever you feed the cells, like if you feed a cow grass versus if you feed it grain at the end, you end up with different types of meat coming out of it. And this is the core concept behind cellular flavoring. Our technology allows us to mimic the natural environment that a food grows up in with bioengineered supplements to influence them to make their own flavor, just like wine gets its flavor from its environment and beef gets its flavor and texture and color from what the cow ate. The benefits of this is that it's clean label. So there's not a whole lot of extra ingredients on the label, which is really important to consumers, especially if you're buying what we want to believe is a raw steak or a burger. We don't want to see 100 different ingredients. It's more cost efficient than additive flavoring. And finally, and most importantly, it can replicate those robust flavors that we all know and love from things like bacon and salmon that the plant-based foods today are just not quite hitting. So this is an example of the Alcheme Bio supplement. And how we would use this supplement is we would feed it to cells as they grow or as they're processed. So this is mycelium or mushroom. And this mushroom is actually growing on a substrate. And so in this instance, we feed the supplement into the soil so that as the mushroom grows, it uptakes the supplement and brings the flavor into the mushroom. In this example, this is whey protein. You might have heard about these being precision fermented or created in your smoothies. So this is produced in a dry format, and then it typically will have some sort of mixing or with water or liquid. And so in this instance, we've put the supplement into that liquid solution and have the whey protein marinade in this supplement mix, which is, for those of you who are in the biotech space, enzymes and precursors, kind of like fermenting or marinating. And then finally, for the cultivated meat, particularly industry, but everyone cultivating all types of food in the lab, we put this supplement into the bioreactor where the cells are growing. And in the same way that the mushrooms uptake the nutrients and things given to them from the soil, the cells uptake these supplements in the bioreactor. And when they're harvested and taken out of the bioreactor, they taste much more like the traditional foods that we're used to because they've been exposed to some of those same elements. So how do we make these supplements? We are building the world's first cellular flavoring database that connects the impact of enzymes and precursors on food composition and then to consumer flavor preferences. We've started with 2 million data points pulled from current day literature as well as our own scientific lab experiments and pilots with our current customers. How does this supplement compare to today's additive flavoring options? Typically, companies will spend anywhere 3 to 8% of a retail price on flavoring. So if you purchase milk, probably about 3% of the cost of that milk is flavoring. If you're purchasing beer or something that's a little bit more nuanced, then they've probably spent a lot more on flavoring, about 8%. One of our supplements is only 1% of a typical retail purchase price for a kilogram of meat. And we believe that these supplements, they would be mixed and matched to get the right flavor. So maybe anywhere from 2 to 5, based on our initial pilots with customers, would be needed. So we're providing a solution for flavor that actually works. It's clean label and it's less cost than the alternative. So how big could this be? Our focus is really on sustainable foods. We want to reduce carbon through these bioengineered supplements. And so we're focused on how do we, A, help those plant-based foods that are already in market taste like what they are trying to replicate, number one. And that is today an $8 billion market. So 5% of that on flavoring, if we capture 10%, that's our first 40 million. But the real focus is how do we increase the amount of the $4.7 trillion global market of meat, dairy, seafood, chocolate, oils, all of these things that are creating a quarter of our carbon emissions today. How do we shift more of those to be plant-based and cultivated? By making them taste delicious. And we're only at 0.1% of that market today, but we believe that we can push it and make it way bigger than that through our solution. So this is a list of our competitors. Most of them are in the traditional flavoring companies that have zero experience in biotechnology, zero experience in turning on metabolic pathways, in understanding compositional analyses of various food types, in novel enzymes and protein development. So we see us developing that core database as an asset that they are going to find very, very attractive in order to cement their position as one of the top 4 or 5 flavoring companies in the world. We're competitively defensible because we have 3 provisional patents, and we'll be continuing to build out that patent portfolio that cover our method for developing these supplements, the actual formulations themselves, and some of the analytics that we perform in order to understand which supplements to use when. Our database and algorithm is a trade secret, built from millions of data points from literature, lab work, and customer pilots. It would be very hard and timely and costly to replicate. We've been going for a year now. We have 250K in LOI revenue for this year. We have 7 of those LOIs, and 3 of them are active pilots that are undergoing today with those customers to confirm and show the results of adding our supplement to their process, and a pipeline of strong discussions. So we would like to invite you all to join with us in building the largest cellular flavoring database and capturing our first 10 customers and building our first 3 million in revenue and seeing those patents turn to granted. We are raising a $2 million seed in order to make sure that our sustainable foods in the system today are delicious by design. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. We'll take a couple questions from the audience. Any questions? Any questions for Claire? Yes, Beth.
This is really quite interesting. I have a question it's a more practical question is, how do you figure out what combinations you need to use? Are you literally testing every single option or is that part of your algorithm?
Yeah, it's part of the algorithm. When it's cultivated, we're actually trying to create the same chemical composition as the traditional. So the customers will say, hey, we want it to taste like Kroger 80/20 beef. And we'll say, okay, these are the 10 compounds that drive flavor. And the way we know that is through a lot of experiments on the back end with certain tools that help to make those correlations and confirm that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Claire.